my name sign is this, because it's easier to give someone a name sign than it is to spell out everyone's name.
My name is Andrea. My sign name is this. It describes the long hair and people of the deaf community that gave me that name remembered me by. A deaf member of the community will give you a sign name that either describes your physical features or something that makes it easier to say your name instead of spelling it out every time you're spoken to. In the beginning of the clip, Stephanie said sentence structure. And also, following that, she stated a sentence. But ASL has different grammar rules than plain English language. Their grammar rules go subject, verb, noun. So, movies go want. In that clip, Stephanie did the wrong way. She did English Sign Language, which was saying you want to go to the movies, versus the real way, which would be movies go want, while raising the eyebrows, stating that you're asking a WH question. In the deaf community, it's considered rude to avert your eyes in another direction whenever another deaf person is speaking, or in other words, signing. This is because their main sense is sight, and so therefore you can't turn your eyes because otherwise you're not truly listening to the person. In this clip, Stephanie and Katie provide a good example of deaf communication. As you saw in this clip, Stephanie and Katie had a bad conversation. That is a bad example of deaf communication. Katie averted her eyes and started kicking the ground whenever Stephanie was trying to speak. And Stephanie became very agitated and offended at what Katie was doing. While in the deaf community, you must always remember that the person is either severely hearing impaired or deaf, and therefore they find it offensive whenever you attempt to get their attention in the wrong manner. In the clip that we just showed you, Stephanie's sister tapped her on the shoulder. That is an appropriate way to get the attention of a deaf person. Another way of getting attention is flickering lights or standing in front of them and waving to get their attention.
Hey Stephanie! Hey!
In that clip, you notice that Stephanie's sister was behind her yelling, "Hey, hey!" That's not the correct way. Deaf people or hearing impaired people will become very offended because they know that they're not able to hear it, and that another person, if they're in the deaf community, should always know that more than likely they're going to be hearing impaired and not be able to hear that, therefore become offended. While doing research, I found some very cool facts that I'd like to share. There's approximately 22 million hearing impaired people in the U.S. Also, the driving records of hearing impaired people are profoundly safer than those of hearing people. Phyllis Fralick won the Tony Award for the Best Actress of 1980 in the Broadway play Children of a Lesser God. Ms. Fralick was profoundly deaf. Shondale Barnett became the only profoundly deaf man to have a top 10 hit on MTV in 1987. When Beethoven composed his Ninth Symphony, he was profoundly deaf. Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone, in his efforts to create a hearing aid by mistake. He was originally an instructor for deaf children and invented the telephone to help his deaf wife and mother to hear. Scuba divers often use sign language underwater. This is because deaf people can sign or talk at great distances without the use of amplification through the use of sign language. Statistics prove that deaf people live longer than hearing people. Deaf people develop keener senses of observation, feeling, taste, and smell to compensate for their loss of hearing. And finally, and don't forget, deaf people vote, pay taxes, drive cars, attend business, social, and religious events.